when I first was forced to stop and pay attention to the pandemic when it was announced a week ago, I heard my pastor, my boss at the church, tell us that we're gonna not be gathering on Sundays and our jobs are gonna look very different, and basically they're not even trying to stop this virus from spreading because that's not possible. They're just trying to flatten the curve. I felt my heart drop to my feet. Then the next, I would say, 24 to 48 hours, I was not myself. I had this weird experience where basically I couldn't think, I couldn't do much. I would walk upstairs and forget what I came up for. I would sit down to finish my work at home, my other job, making music. And I would just feel like, why am I doing this? It's pointless. I felt really discouraged, sad, scared, paralyzed, and just was not functioning. Finally, the next night, so definitely 36 hours later, I realized what was happening. And that was that I was having a little bit of mild PTSD. I don't say that lightly. I made sure I took the little quiz online and verified that that was actually it, because I don't just throw that term out there, because I feel like there are people who've been through a lot worse stuff than me, and it's a real thing that they deal with. So I had never experienced that before, but basically because I've been through an infectious disease that kind of stole a year and a half of my quality of life a decade ago, when I sat and listened to someone talking about this infectious disease spreading and the likelihood of us all eventually being exposed to it, or a certain percentage of us getting it over the next year or two, even though in my rational brain I was okay and I was like, well, can't do much about it, pandemic happens, my subconscious brain took me back 10 years to the disease I had, which was scarier than this one as far as actually contracting it and having to deal with it. But thankfully less people do. I totally didn't know, I didn't have any cognitive connection. I didn't put two and two together until the following night. And then when I did, and I realized, oh, it makes sense that I'm not feeling right because I went through something gnarly and this is a trigger. And it almost felt like as soon as I realized it, it made it start to go away. And the past went back into the past where it belonged. And I was able to process and start to kind of think through some of the next steps for my self-care and what I need in this time where we're all having to shelter in place. So I'm okay now, and I wanted to talk to you guys about maybe some tips that if you're feeling fear or even a tiny bit of PTSD because of fear or whatever your unique experience is, here's what helped me. Number one, and then I, a few days later, got to talk with my therapist, and we kind of went through the whole thing, and she kind of concurred that that is what it was. Thankfully, my brain sorted it out, and I didn't really need to do EMDR or anything for it at this point. So, all that to say, realizing it and putting two and two together helped me. So she said the reason that that helps is it validates. Basically, we just really need to know that what we're feeling makes sense. And what I was feeling made no sense to me for the first day that I felt it, because I'd never been through or experienced it before. But after I realized, oh, that's what's probably happening, it was this wave of relief. Okay, got it. And just understanding it, I breathed a sigh of relief and was able to move through it from there. So what I did next was I spent some time letting my feelings be what they were and bringing them before the Father, and also at the same time deciding what I will and will not put up with moving forward. So as we walk through the next few months, or however long we have to modify our lives to slow the spread of COVID-19, I refuse to spend that period of my life in fear, dread, worry, OCD. I'm not going to do it. Now, is that being carried out perfectly? No, not yet, but it's important to declare what your future and what your life are going to look like. So I prayed and I said out loud, I'm not going to be afraid. Do not fear is a huge theme if you practice Christianity. So basically it's the thing that Jesus said the most: don't be afraid. Now, that sounds like a sort of impossible command sometimes, especially when there's a gnarly new virus spreading across your state and you are immunocompromised. But I've learned that you actually can step out of fear. You can surrender it to God and kind of get out of that mode. And one thing that helps me do that is praying. So then I started kind of worshiping and praising and thanking Him that I was alive this long, thanking Him that I don't have it, and if I get it, I'll probably live, thanking Him that I live in the US and that I have resources and that I have a family and that I have a nice house and that I have canned food because the store is being bought up and people are hoarding, and people with food allergies like me are having less luck finding what they need. But just turning that around and saying, you know what, I'm going to be thankful and I'm going to list what I'm grateful for, and I'm going to approach this with bravery, even though my emotions don't feel like that yet. So, and then the other stuff that my therapist told me was, if you do find yourself having PTSD about anything, and you can't just get through it by validating how you're feeling and realizing what it's from and kind of putting the past back in the past and letting your emotions come back to normal like I did. Like if it's more severe, she was saying EMDR helps or therapy helps, and basically it's valid, it's a real thing, and some people aren't meant to like walk through it alone. They need help and they need a safe person to talk to who knows about it. So definitely, if you're feeling like what is happening to you might be PTSD, then definitely reach out for some help online. And you can comment below and I will say a prayer for you. That sometimes helps too. But if it's just like normal fear or maybe higher than average fear and anxiety like I tend to have, at least initially when things like this happen, those are some things that helped me get to a better spot. So now I've been watching how much media I consume. That's a big one, because if I am glued to my phone or the TV, it just repeats the same information over and over again, but it like makes it more and more in the forefront of my mind and I get all wound up inside. So I've been watching funny movies instead, and now that I know what I need to know and am staying as safe and healthy as I can and doing what I can, I've got to let the rest go and I've got to just lay down my worries and move forward in faith and be hopeful and be confident, because I don't want the possibility of something happening tomorrow steal the joy of today. So I've listed all the advantages of getting to stay home more, like more sleep and rest, more time with my husband, more time to write songs and make music and record. I'm going to be a better producer after this shelter in place, that's for sure. And of course, getting to study the Bible and read and learn and read books and just spend time doing some introverted things that I love to do, plus FaceTiming my family and friends. All those things that pour into my soul and feed my spirit, because this isn't easy for me or for anyone who feels like they're immunocompromised on any level. So what we fix our mind on and meditate on influences our emotion and the level of fear that we have. If we're constantly watching the news, our fear and stress will go up. If we're putting things in our mind like that are more positive and hopeful and inspiring, content created by people who don't operate in fear and have a different spirit behind their content, then our emotions will sometimes follow and that fear will subside. Fear is a big deal. When I was sick, the fear was sometimes worse than the disease. If you have health problems, you're going to have to interact with fear, work through it, move through it, acknowledge that it's valid and realistic and a normal human way to feel, but then refuse to partner with it. Stop your thoughts in mid-sentence. You've already thought that thought. Say out loud, stop. I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to pray. I'm going to trust that this scenario will turn out better than what I'm imagining right now. We don't get to decide our lives or our futures, but we do get to influence them. And we want to shut the door on fear any and every way we can. It just doesn't bear good fruit in our lives. Just know that doing what you can will end up helping you a lot. It helped me. Oh, and one last thought while I'm talking about fear. There is a sense in which fear is actually a spirit. It's a being. And sometimes we interact with the spirit realm, and that causes us to feel different things or think different things as well as just our own selves. So if that's happening to you, or you think it might be happening to you, where there's kind of an ominous presence of fear around you or above you, then you'll need to learn about spiritual warfare and taking authority and knowing Jesus personally so that you can take authority over fear and dread and things like that. So I talk about that more in other videos, and there's tons of really good resources out there on that, including Neil Anderson and Stephen Furtick. I'll put some resources below if you're interested in learning more about that. So thanks for watching this, you guys. Stay brave. We'll get through this. It'll be over before we know it, and we'll be even more creative and rested and learned than we are now. Okay.